microphone.
Yeah. I finally got the booster pack, so I've got the better wireless in here.
Looking really good. All right, so yeah, we'll just start right in, guys. It's the things we have power. It's 1:15.
It's Friday, March 6th.
It is Friday, March 6th. All right, here we go. All right, we're gonna go Mike, then Ty, then Kevin, then.
By the way, it's unusual that we're going to have 2 months in a row where we're going to have Friday the 13th.
It always happens with February and March, unless you have that leap year. Right? Think about it.
Not always.
It always happens because there's 28 days in February. So the dates will always line up again the next month.
Sure.
Here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It's Friday, March 6th, 26:15.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Ty Anderson.
And I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
And I'm Eklund, coming to you from the future. And this is the HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. And no, we're not in the future. We're actually probably about 3.5 seconds in the past if you're watching this live. And if you're not, then we're way in the past. But we are definitely the Hockey Buzz podcast that comes to you Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock, to give you the details. And now that we have electricity back in the Hockey Buzz studios, although I will tell you this, I came down and this whole Hockey Buzz sign behind me, when I finally got back down in the darkness of my office, it had fallen down and collapsed, and the Z fell off, the one Z. So I reattached it briefly. And we'll see. It's kind of like it's kind of very, very tenuous at best, and at any moment could come down and collapse on me. But just saying, we'll see what happens.
And if you turn around and catch it, you're catching Z's.
Right. Yes, very nice. All right. So, besides that, we've got a good show in store for you. We've got a bunch of things. We're going to talk about the Bruins, and of course, the Bruins Flyers have a big matchup coming tomorrow. Last night was a really good. A fun night to follow that race as it was going on because all the teams were about tied or one goal up and throughout the entire evening, the Panthers and Flyers and Bruins, and it really was exciting to watch how that was playing out. Because I was watching I didn't go down to the Flyers game because of Mother Nature trying to kill us for the last couple of days. I couldn't travel down there. I'm watching the game, and I've got the Bruins game on, and I see that the Bruins are tied 2-2. The Flyers are down 1-0. It's the third period in both games, and I see. Just as the Bruins fall back by 1 goal, the Flyers come in and tie it, and go ahead, all in a matter of probably 5 minutes. So everything changed from them being down in this to them being up in the race, and then of course the Bruins get the point back. But the Flyers do get a big win off the Blues again, proving that the Flyers can only play against teams that are good, which again they've done this week by beating 2 good teams after losing to 2 good teams, which is their pattern. So Ty, that was another one, and I'm going to do something today that's interesting because after we go through this, I'm going to go through. I went through a practice that I wanted to do for my blog today, and I didn't get it up in time, so I'm going to put it up after this. But we'll all talk about it on this show. I took since the All-Star break, since the All-Star game, which was January 25th, and I went through and I took all 30 teams and saw how many points they've collected out of the possible points they could have gotten based on their percentages. Basically, if you could have gotten 10 points, you got 5 points, you'd be at 50%. It's sort of most teams have played about 20 games since then, so it's about a 20 game stretch, and you're right in there. And it's a fascinating list when you look at who's 1 to 30. It's nothing like you'd expect. I mean, obviously the bottom teams are where you'd expect, but from 25 to 1, I would say once you get past Buffalo, Columbus, Arizona, Toronto, and Edmonton, there's It's really a logjam. It's crazy. So let's talk a little bit about the Bruins game last night, Ty, first, and also we want to get into the signings. The Bruins made a couple signings. They just in time for tie day. Just as I said, please only do your releases on Fridays.
Of course.
And they listen finally. So what's going on?
Another game, another hard-fought game. Between the Bruins and Flames. The Flames have a tendency to wear teams down, and they did exactly that. They forced the Bruins into a lot of mistakes, and you'd see that last night where the Bruins had some really strong shifts, and it'd be followed up with one where Calgary just bank on every mistake the Bruins made and end up in the back of the net. Yuri Hudler and Johnny Gaudreau both had great games, I think, for the Flames. Carrie Ramo played unbelievable in net for Calgary, which is kind of been his MO this year on the road. But I think, Boston, this is a team that they're starting to look around. They see the standings and they see teams coming down on them, and I think they're starting to stiffen up a bit. And that's good and bad. It gets you results. The pressure sometimes it forces the game tying goal, or it forces you to get an overtime loss or shootout loss versus regulation loss. But I think the Bruins are starting to sort of feel the pressure of these teams now. Now you have Ottawa is 5 points out, Philadelphia is 4 points out, Florida is 2. They're starting to feel it, and while they don't say it, I think frustration is setting in when they dominate games like they did last night at 5-on-5, but they take bad penalties, they have defensive breakdowns, and it keeps these teams hanging around in all these games. And it's really their lack of execution, their lack of finish that's absolutely killing them right now. It's making this a race, and when it comes to the Eastern Conference, I don't know if any team really wants that number 8 seed. It seems that all these teams get close to it and they crumble. So I don't know what it is, but
no, you're right. You're right about
another
that.
day in the life of the Bruins.
It's totally different than the West. Like the Western Coast, where all these teams are playing incredibly well, and teams even out of the playoffs are playing really well right now. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this list earlier, to see if that really was true, that the teams are, if no one wants to win it in the East, no one wants to win, no one wants to lose in the West, basically. And it's kind of surprising because it didn't quite come out that way. It didn't come out nearly as I thought. But let's talk about the signings first, and then I'll get into my list, and we'll talk about how it pertains to the Eastern Conference. So the 2 signings today, Krug and Riley Smith, both signed today, both for short deals.
Yeah, short deals. It's sort of prove your worth type of deals. They both had 1-year deals this past season, and I think Krug has met his expectations. Riley Smith is a little bit of a different story, I would say. But these are guys that they view as part of their core. They've worked on these for a while now. January 1st was the first day that they could start talking to them. And from everything I gathered, that was something that they made a point. They wanted to get this done quickly. It's tough, though. I mean, they're committing almost $7 million to these 2 players. And, they're tight against the cap as it is. And I think it's tough. I think Torrey Krug has sort of proved his worth as a top 4. I mean, he plays in the third pairing, but he's really the face of that team when it comes to their offensive defensemen and what they can do in the power play. He's such a crucial part of that team. So I thought his contract, it fit. It's a little high for a guy who plays in the third pairing, but he wants that challenge to prove that he can be a top 4 defenseman on this team, and it sounds like he's going to get that opportunity. With Riley Smith, it's tough because, it's 2 years, 3.4 plus. And you look at Riley, he's really struggled this year. I mean, this is a player that at one point had 3 goals in 29 games. He's turned it on as of late, but again, this is sort of one of those things where you feel like, in a way, the Bruins are rewarding their guys for taking a bridge deal, which is part of the thing that got them in this cap mess in the first place. So it's a tough way to operate. I don't know how sustainable it is. Now that you have Brett Connolly as well, I mean, this is a player that Peter Chiarelli told me 4 days ago was a part of this team's future top 6. And now you're paying Riley Smith almost $3.5 million. I mean, it's going to be tough to put him on that third line when you're as tight against the cap as the Bruins are. And I just think they went a little bit high on both guys, but it's clear they view them as part of the core, and that's where they're going with this.
Well, I think it's safe too. I mean, after having to lose a defenseman that really definitely hurt them, and that they had to be nervous about this. They had to make a move to make sure that they didn't lose another defenseman to cap issues right off the bat, because that was definitely a spot. Kevin, what are your thoughts on these signings?
Well, when you review the Boston Bruins salary cap structure and then analyze where they are at this season, I think there is cause for some alarm. I mean, the alarm would be that obviously the Bruins have not lived up to expectations this season, and they're pushing towards $60 million with their commitments already for next season, and they still have work to do. Hamilton has to be re-signed. Svedberg needs to be re-signed, and now they have some decisions to make, obviously, on some of the unrestricted free agents that they have, Soderberg and McQuaid, and I'm forgetting a couple here, but they have
Campbell.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, obviously, it's likely that 2 or 3 of those guys are not coming back. But the bigger picture for me is, what if they decide to make some major changes because they don't like where they're at now? in order to do that, you need cap flexibility, and they have zero. And we've all heard the rumors. Are they going to trade Erickson in the offseason? Are they going to move out somebody? Because if you want to make some significant changes, you got to have the room to do that, and they simply don't. So I think that's two problems. I thought the contracts themselves, to be honest, were fair market value. Ty's point is well taken. I mean, they have given them a little boost for taking the bridge, the short-term deals. But that's kind of in the neighborhood of what you would expect them to be. So it's not like they grossly overpaid, but they have a talented team, and they've had to. All the emphasis has been on retaining these guys. And what I wonder is, what if this summer they decide, yeah, but we got to change some of these guys? They don't have the room to do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing, the bonus overage from the Jerome McGinley contract, which is around $4.8 million this year, drops off at the end of this year. So that they have that flexibility and that room back on next year's cap. But I mean, to your point, Kevin, I mean, we've heard the stuff about Erickson. We've also heard, hints about them maybe moving out Milan Lucic. Now, I can't believe that the Bruins would move Lucic, because after the departure of Boychuk and you see Zdeno Chara crumbling with old age, I don't think that I think that Lucic is the one remaining vestige of the big bad Bruins left on that team, and I can't see them parting with him. I see them trying to sign him to an extension and keep him around as long as possible, unless there's some internal strife going on in the locker room that we have no way of knowing if that's going on. But there could be a dramatic turnover in that organization, because they have McQuaid and they have Bartkowski as UFAs and the 3 UFA forwards that they have, and based on the way this team is going lately, maybe they want to make those changes.
Yeah, that's the question. Obviously Lucic is impossible to see him in another uniform. Just even to fathom it is one of those things. That is one of those players. But is it possible, Ty?
I think it could be. I mean, you look at Milan and you look at Lucic and what he's done, and I think one of the big things is that he's making $6 million right now. He's not having the best season of his career by any stretch, and then it's going to be tough for the Bruins to go to him next year and say, "Hey, we think you're worth less. We don't think you're a $6 million player." That's typically not how they operate, and that's not how many NHL players operate. They don't want to take less money, and I think that's a big thing for them. I mean, if Lucic comes back next year and he wants, what David Krejci and Chris Bergeron are making. If he wants $7 million to $7.5 million, I think the Bruins have to sort of weigh it out and go, all right, well, Lucic's style of play is one that's going to force him to sort of decrease in value over time. So it could come into the asset management part of Chiarelli's front office workings that he's always been pretty strong at, I think. So there is a situation where I think Milan Lucic could be traded. But I don't think it's really on their minds as something they want to do. But I think if it gets to that point where they realize, hey, we can't or we don't want to fit this guy in at $7 million, $7.5 million, I think they do entertain the idea of it for sure.
I think Act is frozen.
Yeah, that's video.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's hard. Sorry, it is hard to get fair value for Lucic, because he seems like he's more valuable to the Bruins than he is other teams. But it's just one of those situations where I don't know.
Trading Lucic would be hard, in my opinion, just because he's, his style of play represents kind of the Bruins' history. Like if they take him out of the mix, it's almost like they're a completely different team. Like who do they have that plays the role of the big bad Bruin? That's not competitively, that's not a big deal, but I think for the fan base, you kind of need a guy like that. But Ty's right on the money. Like, it would be difficult for them to come to a player of his status and say, you got to give us not only a hometown discount but a deep cut. And so that would kind of be difficult. But they're kind of this is a team that's kind of at a crossroads. I think they're going to have to make some decisions, this summer that I'm not sure they anticipated they were going to have to make. I think mostly it's for the last couple of seasons really about retaining the talent we have because we're a good hockey team, and I think now you got to start thinking in terms, as I mentioned, of okay, if we need to make changes, how do we go about doing that?
Especially if they make an early exit in the playoffs. I mean, first they have to make the playoffs. Second of all, if they exit in the first round after and lose to somebody like Montreal, I mean that anytime they lose to Montreal, that's a reason for not panic but for concern from the part of the Boston Bruins. But I would think that the realization is there that they would have lost to that team 2 years in a row, and the mix that they have is not good enough to beat that team, and they have to react to that. And if Peter Chiarelli is the GM there, I mean, that's a question as well, because we've heard if they miss the playoffs or if they take an early exit that he could be gone and Claude Julien could be gone. Maybe they hold back on any changes to see if a new GM and a new coach have a different approach, but I'm not sure where they're going to go. Everything falls into place based on the decisions that ownership and upper management do with Chiarelli and Julien. I think if they stay, then there are going to be more roster changes, and if they don't, maybe the roster will stay relatively the same, and they'll try a few other different things.
By the way, that's just incredible when you think about it. That Chiarelli and Julien should be subject to a review that cost them their job, if that's indeed accurate. I mean, I don't have any inside information on that, but it has been mentioned so often, and you wonder if there is some truth to it. But it makes no sense to me. I mean, Chiarelli has kept this team at the top. He has a good history of other than the salary cap issue, which is significant. Granted. I mean, he's done a good job of I thought the trade for Connolly was good.
It was a really good trade. And the salary cap issue is really just a byproduct of winning. I mean, that's all it comes down to. I mean, when you win, you're going to have a salary cap issue. We've seen it with every team, and they've done a better job than most, at handling it. They've done a better job than Chicago's done in handling it. They've done a better job at Carolina did.
Hey, before we go any further here, am I the only person hearing these echoes, or is it just
everybody is.
We're all hearing it, right? All right, I'm going to mute each of us one at a time here and see. So I'm going to let's just do a quick test here, and I'll try to edit this out. So let's see. I'm going to mute Ty. All right, and then you have to unmute yourself eventually. So now are we still hearing the echo now? Is it going now? Do we get rid of it?
3.
I don't hear anything now.
All right, so we're okay now. We don't hear it. I don't hear it. Ty, it's you. All right.
Lower your volume, young man.
How we doing?
Okay, good. We'll just lower your volume a little bit, and that'll work.
All right.
Yeah.
I hear it again. So.
Oh, great.
You hear it again now.
Can you turn it down?
Call back in, Ty. Call back in. Maybe it's just a.
How about now?
I'm not hearing it now.
That seems good for me. How about you guys?
Yeah,
okay, good.
Fine for me.
Good. Cool. All right, something's up. Never know. Who knows in the world of Google Hangouts where we are?
Honestly,
all right. Well, thanks.
With Chiarelli and with Julien, I mean, if they fire Claude, I think it's a huge mistake. I think he's one of the top 5, top 10, maybe top 5 coaches in this entire league. So I think that'd be a mistake. With Chiarelli, it's a different story because a lot of people talk about how they haven't drafted very well, and that does play a factor with your salary cap. When you don't have any young guys coming in on these entry-level deals, it's always tough to manage that. So that's a problem for them as well, I think. But honestly, I mean, one bad year shouldn't cost everyone their job. But I can see the frustration with Chiarelli more than I can with Julien. That's all.
Yeah, I agree with you as a top 5 coach for Julien. I mean, that's like the team you don't want to play in the playoffs is Boston, because Julien will have that team as prepared as it can be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, completely revved up, and I mean, I think that's what everybody's afraid of for sure.
I just know this.
And we're hearing the echo.
Yeah, I'm hearing the echo again now.
One second. Because. All right, so let's see. Now we're all hearing the echo again, right? So it's not Josh.
Could
Kevin,
you have a browser open, Ek? I mean, is that
I'm going to mute Kevin. Okay, so, everyone hear it now? No?
Yep.
I hear an echo still.
So let's mute Mike. We'll get to the point where it's right.
This is riveting, guys.
I know. Sorry, it's good television. All right, Mike's muted. Everyone's hearing it now. Shake your head yes or no because I can't hear you. Still hearing it?
I haven't heard echoes.
Yeah.
Mute yourself.
I've never heard the echo at all. Try again.
Mute yourself.
All right, fine. I'll mute me.
You watch. It's him. I'll bet you anything it's him.
Yeah, I don't hear
I
it.
don't hear it now.
It's you!
Yeah.
It's you. You're
Yeah.
the one.
Blame it everyone
All right.
else.
I'll call back in. I'll be back. You guys continue talking as you were.
Spreading blame all over the Hockey Buzzcast, and it's you.
I'm out of here. I'm out of that broadcast. Crap. Hold on. Continue broadcast. All right, I almost ended the broadcast. All right, so let me see what I can do here. Okay, hold on. I'm going to try to get out without ending the broadcast. Let's see what happens.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yep, he did. We're still live.
Yeah.
But okay. One thing though, I mean, Eck is right. I mean, this is a byproduct of success on the ice. I mean, all I know is that, and maybe this is in Buffalo and Toronto. If Claude Julien and Peter Chiarelli had led either organization to a Stanley Cup, they would be naming streets after them, Ty. But in Boston, and there was a long drought. I mean, when was the last time they won the Stanley Cup? 72.
Yep.
Okay, so I mean, and this team, and they reached the Stanley Cup final in 2013. I mean, is this just the reactionary? Is this a if they fire Chiarelli and Julien, is this Cam Neely? Is this Charlie Jacobs? Is it the combination of the two? What is it?
Well, I think they've set themselves up into a corner here where it's not a great position to deal from. When Charlie Jacobs comes out and he talks about how if they don't do well, heads are going to roll. I mean, you're not really setting anyone up for success. I mean, now GMs know that. Now GMs are going to try to gouge Peter Chiarelli on their trades. Teams aren't going to, teams know that they can take advantage of the Boston Bruins. There's a lot of pressure on the Boston Bruins right now. And I think, they'd set themselves up here where even if things don't go well and they don't make a change, what do they do now? A situation where if they don't make the playoffs, they also were without David Krejci for the entire stretch run, and that's a pretty big loss. They could be. If they lose to Montreal, then it's like, all right, we drew the Eastern Conference's best team with Carey Price posting a .940 save percentage or whatever it's been.
Right.
So how much blame can you really have on your team? So I think they've set themselves up for this awful sort of situation here where someone's going to lose their job or somebody's going to get traded, and it's not necessarily going to be for the advancement of the organization. They're not going to be better for it. So that's something that I think that the Bruins have set themselves up for this, and it's just a nightmare. And I don't think anyone can really take the blame or be like, this will be so-and-so's decision. It's more of, we've set ourselves up for a riot if we don't do anything because we've told everyone that this is going to happen if X doesn't happen. So I don't know. It's a mess there.
Isn't there a fine line between setting yourself up?
Where he called out the team and said they need to be better, and now that pressure has switched over to the front office and to the coaching staff. And I don't know if that's the right call, but it's where they are.
Yeah, I agree. But isn't there a fine line between setting yourself up and just this is like the way we do things here in Boston? We don't accept anything. We don't accept losing. We don't accept we're gonna push anything. We don't accept anything else. And I'm echoing again, aren't I?
No, keep going.
No, you're good.
Okay, good. Because you all looked at me dumbfoundedly, which is normal. But I just wanted to make sure that this time it wasn't because of the echo. All right, so.
Well, I know I have the perfect solution for the Boston Bruins. It's the return of Phil Kessel.
Yeah, they need another big, high salary cap player. That would be the perfect.
Yeah, that's the last thing they need right now.
Someplace where he's loved in the media. There you go.
I mean, part of the Chiarelli thing, I don't buy, and I'm not buying it, Kevin. Like we've heard it many times, but we've heard it from certain people many times, and I don't buy that Chiarelli is in trouble as much. I mean, this 2 Stanley Cup appearances in the last 4 or 5 years or whatever. That's should keep your job for another couple of years. I mean, this is ridiculous. Like there are so many teams who never get there at all, and they won a cup, they got really close to winning another cup. A couple seconds maybe away from winning another cup. So I mean, the whole thing is just to me, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy that Chiarelli's in trouble, but I think that there is. I'm okay with the owner coming out and saying stuff because to me that's kind of like what happens here in Philadelphia usually, except for this year. There's apathy is not the apathy doesn't exist, here, and that apathy is something that I see in other markets all the time. And that's one of the things that's kind of was disconcerting about the Flyers this year for the most part is there's a sense of apathy that there was no one calling in anyone on the carpet. There was none of that, so that they were just accepting where they were. So, I mean, Kevin, you said there's a distinction there. It's a tough line to draw.
Yeah, well, you're right. It is because you want your team to be aggressive. You want them not to accept mediocrity, but they can't be so impulsive that they blow everything up every time the wind doesn't blow in the right direction. So yeah, this one is a hard one. I thought Ty's points were good. I guess I hadn't even considered his drafting, but Chiarelli has had everybody liked his Phil Kessel trade, but when they traded Sagan, like there's people around the league who think they gave up on him way too quick, and didn't really make the best trade they could have made. People felt like they could have gotten more out of him. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do, but you can't rule out this team rising up in the playoffs.
Still making I know they're still making the playoffs and still making a run. I know that's the thing. That's we're so close. We're only we're about 15 games away from the playoffs now, right? So I mean, this is crazy.
I still believe they're going to get in. I mean, I'm watching the teams rise up from behind, but the Bruins are a better team than those teams that are rising up. They just have more.
We're going to get it. I know. We're going to see it this weekend with the Flyers, but that's going to be a real gut check for the Bruins and the Flyers. That's a big game. That's tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, and that's a biggie. And then the Bruins have 2 against the Panthers left, so that's another. They're going to get their shot. I mean, I'm sure they've got some games against Ottawa left too, right? So
they got 2 games against Ottawa, and I believe both of them are in Ottawa.
But Ottawa's a factor, that you have to take into account. Ottawa's definitely a factor here. They've got all these games in hand. If they win those games in hand, they're right in this thing. If not, they're a real serious threat.
I would say just something about the Flames. I talked about them yesterday, but one of the things that struck me yesterday about that game, but there couldn't really be a better situation for Gaudreau to go in. This was a franchise that was really sort of waiting for someone to give them a spark and to give them a lift. And Hartley has done a really masterful job of getting everybody on the oars, going in the same direction, playing a style that will allow this group to win. It's not perfect. It wouldn't be good for the Red Wings or the Chicago Blackhawks or the LA Kings, but for this team, it's just perfect. And the other thing I thought I've been watching that is, Gaudreau is a smallish player trying to survive in a big man's game, and he's on a team where Yuri Hudler is one of the key players who's also a smallish player that has found a way. So it's nice for him to look across and see another guy who's figured out how to do it, and maybe he didn't need any mentoring, but I think it does help that there is a guy there. So I said when Giordano went down, I didn't think they were done, because I don't think, even though he is their most important player, he is their most talented player, he is their leader, that's not how they've been winning this season. They've been winning by momentum and chemistry and cohesiveness, and that still will continue even in his absence. So I think they're going to hang in there. I know a lot of people have already predicted doom for them, but I still believe they'll hang in there.
Well, they're a really tough team to play against. I watched the Flyers on Tuesday and a little bit of Bruins last night, and they're the same exact game. They played the same exact game. It was that they had a 2-0 lead on the Flyers. The Flyers fought back to tie it, had all the momentum going, and then Calgary won in overtime on one shot. And then Thursday, they take the lead on the Bruins, have all the momentum going, and Boston ties it up. Has the momentum going again, and then they lose in the shootout. So Calgary won 2 games that they had no business winning. They stole 4 points out of the Eastern Conference. Really, I mean, really, in no question about it. And they did it in a very weird way. They kind of lull you into a sense of things. There's no one that dazzles you on the team. Even Gaudreau. I mean, Gaudreau looked nervous in Philly, which I think was understandable. But he did not look like. I've seen Gaudreau play better games than he played in Philly. But he looked better last night.
But with what they've done, I mean, it's only one game, but what they've done is they've they're stepping up their effort and they're sort of rallying around the absence of Giordano. I mean, I know that Chris Russell yesterday played, I think it was 32 minutes in ice time. Derek England played over 20 minutes. David Schlemko, who they picked up off of waivers from Dallas, scores the winning goal in the shootout, emulating Peter Forsberg's Olympic goal, with that reach around type of goal.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, anybody who, unless you don't have a heart, anybody is going to be rooting for the Calgary Flames to make the playoffs because they're sort of inspiring. It's like they don't have a great deal of talent, but their effort is unbelievable, and they're just, they're really impressive.
Much at the deadline, and that was questionable whether they should have. I mean, I think that the deadline was one of those issues where Calgary could have very easily done something to try to keep themselves going here, and maybe and they knew the injury was going on at the deadline, but they still didn't do it. And it's good because they didn't give up a first-round draft pick to get one of these defensemen in there. They kept it solid, right? And you got to root for them. I mean, they're a really interesting, crazy team to watch, though. You get the sense that they were playing with house money before the injury. They're playing with house money now, so it's no real difference for them. It doesn't matter. Like, the injury happened, but they weren't expected to win before the injury. So now, but they were winning, so everyone's like, oh, now you won't be any good at winning without. But they didn't care. It doesn't. I agree with you, Kevin. I don't think it's as big a factor as people are going to make it into.
I look at that Schlemko thing. It's just like whatever goes right, or whatever happens is going right for this team right now. The Schlemko story is pretty funny last night. It's round 8 of the shootout, and Bob Hartley's trying to figure out who to go to next. Schlemko on the bench goes, well, I'm 1 for 1. Chris Russell says, yeah, he's pretty good. So that's how they ended up going with David Schlemko there. It was not a plan. Bob Hartley's like, all right, go for it. And he pulls out this beautiful move that you would never think David Schlemko could do, and there they are, another win.
You got to love that. Speaking of defensemen, and just to talk about another team as well, I wanted to bring up about Tyler Myers. And we had talked for many weeks about our feeling, and I know I talked to scouts who said the same thing about whether or not Tyler Myers really his development had been stunted, or whether he was simply a product of being in a negative environment where the team hadn't been any good, and psychologically he just was not able to lift himself out of it because he has not been the same player even since his rookie season, and it just seemed like he was in a malaise. Well, if you watch him now, I looked at his stats again this morning. I think he's got 7 points in 9 games, and he's just been a different defenseman. I guess the point of all that is simply to say, I think we forget sometimes, and that how the negativity that surrounds losing, how it impacts development as well. And in Myers' case, he looks like a different defenseman now, and I think I wonder how many guys around the league are in that position had they just gotten to a different team with a different structure, with a different plan in place, with a different winning percentage, if they would be completely different players. Because
I agree.
He looks different to me.
He looks way better, and he even talks more confidently. I saw him interviewed the other day, and he just looks more confident. He looks just like he's found his spot, which is great. And it's Winnipeg, and he's really they're thrilled with him. I mean, I've talked to people out there; they just think he's all that he was meant to be. They think he can skate. Brian Englund covers them, and Englund was amazed at how well he skates and how quickly he turns. How quickly he turns from defense to offense, how his transition is so speedy.
I spoke to Keith Yandel the other day, and again, he goes from the Arizona Coyotes that are in the Connor McDavid, Jack Eichel sweepstakes, and he's got the worst plus minus in the league, and it's tough to score goals there. Now he's on a Stanley Cup contender, and I just asked him the normal question about how that must feel, and he just basically said, "Are you kidding? I mean, it's just unbelievable that now all the games matter, and that the Rangers obviously are a really good team." So it just must be amazing for these players to wake up on the morning of the trade deadline, or in his case the weekend before, and then suddenly find themselves competing for the Stanley Cup 2 or 3 days later.
No, it's incredible.
Here's something that isn't exactly breaking news, but the Tampa Bay Lightning are pretty good. I watched them play against the Leafs last night. I'm not going to talk about the Leafs, but and from the point of where they were exactly 1 year ago today, when they lost Ben Bishop late in the season to an injury and had to go with Anders Lindback in the playoffs. Stamkos was just coming off the fractured ankle, was coming back. He was a shadow of his former self and really didn't look himself in the playoffs when they lost to Montreal. Both those guys are healthy, and I was impressed by their size, by their speed, and by their skill. I mean, not only Tyler Johnson, but Palat and Kucherov, and now they have Carl coming back. They added Coburn.
Yeah.
I mean, this team, I think, more than Montreal, if they can continue to get, if they continue to stay healthy and if they get the goaltending out of Bishop in the playoffs, I think they can get by Montreal, because Montreal, again, last night they scored 3 goals, but I still think when it comes down to the playoffs, they're going to be challenged offensively. And to me, Tampa is extremely a well-rounded squad.
Oh yeah, and along those lines, I have to mention the Hockey Buzz curse, which is fully in effect, because Kevin and I last week we talked about the 2 most consistent teams in the league being the Predators and the Canadiens. And the Preds having now lost 5 in a row, and the Canadiens having lost 4 in a row. It's just crazy. I mean, I guess they got a point last night, right? But before that they had lost 4 in a row. And I mean, so everybody has their slumps. And Rich brings you to one thing we'll do real quickly before we do the news, and that's I wanted to go through my little percentage thing here, because there are some things that are fascinating about it. Obviously, Minnesota is since the All-Star break is the best team in hockey by a lot. I mean, they're 15-2-1 since the All-Star game, so that's 86% of the possible points they could have gotten. They got. Now the next closest has 71% of the possible points they've gotten. Who do we think the next best team is in there?
Ottawa.
You're saying Ottawa? Any other guesses?
Um,
Not Ottawa.
Detroit.
Nope. Detroit's number 5. Ottawa's number 9 on this list of 30.
I would say Rangers.
Rangers, you got it. Yep. Rangers are at 71%. 12-4-3. And this is what I wanted to do. And the next team is Philly at 67.6% since the All-Star break, which is kind of probably surprising to a lot of people, but because they've lost some games they shouldn't have lost. The 3 games they shouldn't have lost, but every game that besides Buffalo, Toronto, and Carolina, they've gotten points out of all their other games, which is crazy to say, but that's actually the truth. Besides those 3 teams.
I hope they don't have a home and home with Arizona and Edmonton soon.
I know. And another thing, then 4 is Montreal at 67%. Detroit's number 5 at 66%, and number 6 is New Jersey at 65%. Mm-hmm. So New Jersey is 10-5-2 since the All-Star game, which people probably don't really think about too much.
Did you say what Toronto's was?
They're number 30. 31%. But yeah. So then you go into LA's number 7. LA's at 7. St. Louis is at 8. Ottawa's at 9. Pittsburgh and Calgary are both 10-6-1 since the All-Star break. So they're both Pittsburgh and Calgary. And Tampa's 10-6-2. So they're slightly behind as far as points they could have gotten, right? The Caps and the Predators have exactly the same record since the All-Star break. How about that? That's kind of a strange thing to think about. There's some teams like that. And the Blackhawks have the same exact record as the Hurricanes since the All-Star break. They're both 8-6-2, wow. Which is crazy. I mean, there's very strange things on this list. I'm going to publish it on my blog later today.
But the Hurricanes have been an over 500 team since the beginning of the year. If you look at the Hurricanes from when Eric Stahl came back till now, they've been an over 500 team. It's completely, even though they've traded Toulouse, they've moved Sakara. They're getting good goaltending, and those 2 guys, the 2 Stahl brothers, they've been the center of them having at least nominal success, and that's.
Yeah. No, you're right. But the crazy thing here is how about this? Winnipeg is 24th on this list. They've only gotten 42% of their points since the All-Star break, and yet they're in the playoff hunt very well. Still, they're still hanging in the playoff hunt in the West. So as we sit back and say, And the two teams that are battling Boston, I mean, let's look at the 4 teams in the Eastern Conference playoff race. The Flyers are by far the best since the All-Star break. They're at 67%. Ottawa's at 62%. Boston is 22nd at the list. They're exactly 50%. They're 6-6-3 since the All-Star break. And Florida is only slightly better at like 52% since the All-Star break. So, I mean, the crazy thing is, so you think about Florida, we think Florida's been playing pretty well, and it seems like they have been. And they definitely have been lately. But, before that, they were struggling. So I do think Philly and Ottawa are trying to win this playoff spot. When we sit there and say no one wants to win the playoff spot, I think they were just pretty far away from the playoff spot to start with. But they're trying to get in there because they're both definitely pushing hard. And San Jose is at 47%. But the other thing that's crazy about this is Boston at 20 is the last team at 50%, right, or above. So they're last at 500 or above. And there's 20. They're 22nd on the list. So that means there's only 8 teams that have gotten less than 50% of their points. So that's, when you think about that, that's kind of crazy, right? I mean, that's
the 3 point.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what's really meant. That's what and this is another argument for me for the 3 points for a regulation win, because that's just nuts. I think that's insane. And that you can do that.
And since the beginning of the year, Toronto has the worst record in the NHL by far.
Well, they do since the All-Star game too. They're 4-11-2, which is only 31% of their, which is slightly better than Arizona, who's 5-12-2, which is 32%. And then Columbus, who has gotten healthy but still isn't playing better. I mean, not completely healthy, of course, but healthier. So yeah, it's a crazy list, and it's funny how teams' different expectations are. Like we still think the Islanders are playing really well. Well, they're 15th. They're right in the middle of this list. I think the Islanders are.
They built up such a lead act that they can
right
in a way.
But they're not playing as well as Calgary or the Senators or the Blues or the Kings or the Devils or or a lot of other teams that you would think maybe are playing not as well. So anyway, that's just, I'll put this together later. But it's really winning, getting as many points as you can matters right now. And if this keeps going in this way, I think the race gets closer with Philly and Ottawa making a bigger push. But so it's gonna. I still think and the Capitals, although they're playing well, I still think they could fall out of it if they continue. They're really far ahead right now, so it's hard to tell. But I don't know. I just look at this whole thing. It is fascinating. And Minnesota, I mean, they're just in the playoffs right now, barely. They're the first wild card, and they've been 15-2-1 since January 25th. I mean, that's crazy. Anyway, let's go to you for news, Josh.
Yes, guys. Let's begin in Philadelphia. I was kind of scratching my head at this today. Not quite sure what the reason was, but I will share it with you. Jeff Reese, the Flyers goalie coach since 2009, no longer with the team. GM Ron Hextall announced today it was a mutual agreement between both parties. Hextall said in a statement, Jeff was an integral part of our coaching staff for the past 6 seasons, and we wish him well. Now, honestly, I'm really surprised by this move, guys, because Steve Mason's talked many times about how important Jeff Reese was for his turnaround in Philadelphia. Quotes from Mason, this was last year, I believe it was last year. He said, he's got to be a number 1 on the chart for me making this turnaround happen. I'm forever grateful for him. I called him after I signed my new extension. I said, this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for you. So I'm a little up in arms about this, Zach. Maybe you have some input on this.
I don't have any inside information, but I'm equally surprised because he's really he is that popular with Mason and the goalies in general. He's been really important here. I don't know what happened. He's one of the nicer guys in the whole organization too, so it's kind of it is confusing. It just happened about an hour ago, so I don't really know. It seems kind of a strange time for a goalie coach to leave. I don't.
Perhaps they're looking for somebody who is a better emergency goaltender if both goalies went down.
Yes, maybe that's it. Go ahead, Josh. Continue.
Well, a little bit of Voinov news today, guys, I want to bring up with you, and it's about the trial, which has been continued, or delayed, if you will, until April the 21st. That's according to lawyer Craig Rosensky. It's like Gretzky kind of spelled, except for the R-E-N. But anyway, he says Voinov's case has been continued. The next court date will be April the 1st for motions. Jury selection is scheduled for April the 21st. Now, Voinov's lawyer told Rich Hammond that the trial was delayed by mutual agreement, so there's no major reason why it was delayed. But something obviously pointed out there, Voinov will not play the rest of the season for sure now.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't know what to say about that one, but yeah.
Okay, moving on. The Calgary Flames intend to announce plans to build a new arena in a couple of weeks. That's according to an interview with team president Ken King on KISS 95.9 radio. And per the Calgary Herald, King assured listeners that we're not going to sneak in here and steal money from the city. So that's good to know.
Yeah, you shouldn't steal money from the city, that's for sure. But I mean, it's nice when people build their own buildings. I mean, I do have a problem when people take all tax money and build buildings because these owners are rich enough to build it themselves. I know the Wells Fargo Center was built by the Flyers and owners and not the city. So, but yet the big Eagles Stadium was built by the city, which makes zero sense. But continue. Go ahead.
Guys, time for a poll, and I want to poll you guys. Who has had the worst luck with injuries, the Blue Jackets or the Winnipeg Jets?
Blue Jackets.
Yeah, I gotta go Jackets.
I'm going with the Jackets as well.
I'm gonna say the Jets. I know the Jets. I'm just to be contrary, but I think the Jets have had a ton of injuries too. So.
Well, the latest in Winnipeg. Dustin Byfuglien is out 2 to 4 weeks. Brian Little is likely to miss the next 2 games of the road trip for the Jets. So, yes, there's been many injuries for the Blue Jackets this year, but you know what? The Jets have had just as many problems. Mark Stewart left today practice. He got hit in the face with a puck. No word if he'll miss some time or not, or if he'll be okay to go. But definitely the injuries continue in Winnipeg, and this is a team that obviously is playoff bound.
And they're 11 games over 500.
And today
that's the crazy thing. They're the last playoff spot here. They're 11 games over 500.
And today they called up Morris the Cat Lukowicz and Lars-Erik Schuberg.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, you know what's interesting about that, and and I know a couple of the Red Wings were talking about it earlier in the year about when the Blue Jackets had all those injuries, the team just didn't perform. They just couldn't overcome them. And you just pointed out the Jets have an equal number of injuries, and look how they have soared. And last year the Red Wings had, I think the other day I heard that the Penguins and the Red Wings had as many injuries as the Blue Jackets, and they hung on and won the playoff spot. So, there's still a history in this league of teams being able to overcome injuries, and and as much as you feel sympathy for the Blue Jackets, they just didn't come through. They couldn't overcome the injuries. Where other teams have done it, as Winnipeg has done this season.
Well, I won't stick up for the Jackets or anything here, but they have not had a healthy Bobrovsky pretty much the whole season. Not to make excuses or anything, but Curtis, what's his name?
McElhinney.
Thank you, McElhinney. McElhinney's played all right. Forsberg's been terrible when filling in for Bobrovsky, and Bobrovsky just hasn't been able to stay healthy, and I think that's been a huge impact for him not playing well this year.
For sure.
Moving on to bad news, or bad luck, shall we say. It's not been the best year this year for Nathan MacKinnon in Colorado, and now he is out 6 to 8 weeks with a broken foot. He also, with the Avalanche out of the playoff picture, he and now on the shelf for 6 to 8 weeks, he also won't be able to go and play for Team Canada at the World Championships like he did last year. But Nathan MacKinnon, not the best year, not the best sophomore. You call it a sophomore slump, if you will, but he didn't have that great of a second year this year in the NHL as he did last year.
No, that's for sure. It's been a tough year for him.
That whole team has struggled to repeat from last year, I'd say.
Yeah, they overachieved last year. Maybe they're right where they should be this year. It's hard to say.
Now, the only thing I can think of in Colorado, guys, is Stastny. Is that big of an impact that's made this team not as...
I think so.
Well, to me, the read on the Avalanche is really simple. Like, there are teams that, and this year the team was the Flames. The Flames have won all these games in the third period. 10 wins come from behind after trailing going into the third period. That's a momentum team, a karma team. The Avalanche, they were a karma team last year. They won a lot of one-goal games. They felt good about themselves. They had a lot of confidence. Well, that's lost. The summer came and no reality hit. And I think like the Flames could be that team next season. We've all said their roster isn't as impressive as other teams, and yet they have found a way to win. So I think that's Stastny obviously played some role, but I think it's just simply it's just hard to sustain that level of play. And last year their advanced stats said they shouldn't have been as good as they were.
Yeah, and they shook up the chemistry by bringing in Briere and Iginla, and they really did not address their main area of need, which has been their defense. Even though Eric Johnson's had a great year, their idea of addressing their defense was adding a veteran in Brad Stewart, and they needed to do a lot more than that. So hopefully Joe Sakic and Patrick Waugh recognize that, and in the summer they go out and make a deal or sign a few defensemen to bolster that team.
That's a good point. Josh, anything else?
Yes, some good injury news on the injury front in Dallas. Tyler Seguin began skating with his teammates yesterday. Could return to the Stars lineup within a week. Seguin's been out of the lineup with a knee injury following a low hit from Panther Dmitry Kulikov on February the 13th. Tyler's really is closing in on day-to-day for us. That's according to Lindy Ruff. So definitely some good news there. And finally, guys, I want to say this is kind of I don't know if it's a funny quote, but definitely an interesting quote and not something you'd expect from a general manager. Peter Chiarelli, Boston Bruins GM, just said, "I wish Cap Geek was still around."
Don't we all?
Well,
and
that's a good
segue
to NHL Cap Space.
Yes.
.com, which is our Hockey Buzz's version of that, and yep, but it's funny that Chiarelli would say that. Surely he's got access to something better than Cap Geek.
No, he always says that. Anytime I asked about a question, he goes, "Look on Cap Geek." I was like, "You're the GM. You should tell me."
Right. That I bet he's upset Cap Geek isn't around because of the questions he gets. Maybe because he's obviously got the ability to look this up. The NHL has something for this. They have their own version of it, which is way better apparently than Cap Geek. I've never seen it. Have you ever seen this version, Kevin?
No, but I did tell the league when Cap Geek went down that they should. Why doesn't the league they can monetize that? That just put it out there for all the fans that like the number crunching and figure that all out. I mean. I'm sure you could just put up ads with it.
Owners are too private, and it's just I think that I agree they could put up ads, but they couldn't monetize it enough to probably get over what would matter to the owners as far as their own privacy parts of it. They'd rather have this be private.
It's going to get out anyway.
Yeah, it is.
What I'm surprised at, Kevin, is that the Players Association didn't do it, because I think it's helpful to the players to see the compare and contrast of salaries with the various players. I'm surprised that the PA
wants it out there, and I think the Players Association will listen to them on that case. I think that's got to be something that both sides have to agree on. And
I mean that's a given that transparency on salaries is why the NHL salaries rose under Bob Goodenow. I mean everybody sort of knew that would happen as soon as it did. I mean, when you keep salaries private, then nobody knows what anyone else is making, and you can't draw a comparison. So.
Right.
Sure.
Wasn't that something that the Red Wings, Kevin, weren't they famous for that? They would never release the financials in their press releases for when they would sign guys to extensions.
Well, I mean, years ago, I mean that was the big, argument that that the top players nobody knew what they were making, and they could say that they would lie and say Gordie Howe was only making $40,000 when he was making a little more than so it was always complicated. But I that's the one thing about Bob Goodenow's. Say what you want about him, a lot of people didn't like him. He was tough to deal with sometimes, but he changed the salary structure in NHL when he came aboard, and the primary way he did it was through the transparency of salaries. He made sure everybody knew, what the top players were earning, and that put pressure on the players too, because they were carrying the flag for the whole league now. Bob and Chris Chelios talked about Goodenow coming to his house, not even telling him, just showing up at his house saying, "You got to get more money because the top defensemen in the league are looking to you to try to raise that." So. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he did. I mean, they did a lot of good things. The Flyers used to have this thing that they would do when the salaries weren't out. That they would, that Ed Snyder would say to people, "Well, I can't pay you more than I'm paying Bobby Clark." And no one knew exactly what that was, but whatever it was, no one could get paid more than Bobby Clark. And yeah, I think that was the same sort of. That was along the lines. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the Steve Mason thing. There's actually a quote from Mason. He said apparently after practice, sitting in his stall after practice, Mason pulled on his ball cap and tried not to look up while he spoke. Sometimes things happen that are hard to understand in the game of hockey, Steve Mason said. Honestly, for me, it just happened out of the blue. So obviously Mason is not very happy about Jeff Reese and the Flyers parting ways.
I'm sure, unfortunately, in this kind of situation, we'll find out what happened eventually. Whether we'll talk about it or not, we'll let you know. But I'll find out what happened, and whether or not it's private or not, we'll see, because this is definitely one of those cases where I can. But let's do the NHL Draft Lottery Simulator for today to end the show here. And, oh, my goodness, gods are laughing at us. Hold on one second. Here we go. I have to turn it around like this, but here we go. The team of today is the Philadelphia Flyers.
Is that because he fired Jeff Reese?
I know, with a 5% chance of winning the lottery, have won the lottery. Once again, of course, Buffalo will get the second pick. The 80% chance of getting Eichel that exists in Buffalo right now.
The Eichel sweepstakes.
Yeah, no, it really is the Eichel sweepstakes.
Yeah, that's right.
And the Oilers won't have to deal with the fact that they don't really want to draft two more forwards, and they'll get the third pick. So there you go. Here we go. Guys, thanks so much for watching today. Have a great weekend wherever you are. Enjoy yourself. And watch the hockey, because there's playoff implications all over the place this weekend on the schedule. Without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.